3, 4.
At the end.
Nearly.
We will jam a blues successfully before the end of this series.
At some point or other we will. So hey guys, welcome back. I believe we are on number 3 now.
I think
number
so.
2, number 3.
Something like that.
The videos that Justin
Rutbusters.
from JustinGuitar.com, yes, Rutbusters, aimed at guitar players like me who are in a rut. So what is the name of
today's little session?
3.
It's going to be chord-specific licks, which sounds kind of scary, but it's a fairly important concept that a lot of people tend to miss along the way.
Yeah.
It can open a lot of doors and it can stop people playing some horrible stuff at the same time. So I think it's effective. Now, one of the reasons why I thought of this is because you're actually already doing it sometimes, but you're not sure what it is, and I know you don't know it, so I want to kind of head you off at the pass from doing it in the wrong place, and allow you to take the idea a little bit further. Now, on a most basic level, there are licks that are really common everyday licks that work specifically over some chords of the blues and not others, right? And the most common one is the one that you use quite often, which is this kind of or whatever, anything like that. So I'm in the key of G now, but it's using this note, whether it's or now that particular note works really well. It's not in the minor pentatonic scale, so it's come from somewhere else. Any idea where it's come from?
No. Oh, the chord maybe? The
chord.
G major chord.
Okay, so it's come from the G chord.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, so straight away, when we're playing the G chord, that note sounds wicked.
Right.
But as soon as we move to a C chord and we play that same note, it sounds horrid.
Right.
Right? Because you get this, which in a blues context, it's just, it's not a happy camper at all.
It sounded like a song though, didn't it?
No, I did. But it's not a blues song, right? It won't work in a blues thing. It'll work in a kind of a rock context. But over a set, just if you give me a G7 chord or a G chord, whatever, G. Sounds great. Now go to a C or a C7.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It's just really, really
horrible.
Not happening at all.
And I bet I play that all the time. No wonder Pete Henry hates it when I play that note.
Okay, so this note is a chord-specific note that works over the G, but it doesn't work over it. You can kind of use it over the D, but it doesn't sound great. It doesn't sound terrible, so it's a bit androgynous over the D chord. But over the C, it's really nasty. Right? So the first thing to do is realize when you're using it. Okay, and if you're using it, making sure that you use it over the right chord. Now, a really great example of changing a lick to fit the chord sequence is there's a status quo riff that where you can hear it going from the G to the C. Because if they kept playing that same first lick over the G, it'd be really rank, right? So
even more horrible than it normally is. I'm kidding.
Oh no!
I quite like status quo.
I love status quo. Anyway, but that's a really good example of where it's quite possible that they didn't know that it, like, oh, we can't play that because it's the third of G and it'll be a clashing because it's the major seventh of C.
Right.
That's probably not what's going through their head. They just listened and went, hey man, that note really sucks. How about you change it to one that doesn't suck so bad? So they've got that. So any of the licks that you've got where you might normally, you just have to not put that down. So if you have becomes, you just have to just leave it off. Completely.
It's definitely my comfort blanket note, that one.
Exactly.
I need to know when to.
I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, because over the G chord, it's wicked. You couldn't get a better note to use over the G chord. You just can't use it over the C.
No,
Yeah.
I get that. Although, yeah, I'm trying to think whether or not I presume I do just throw it in inappropriately, but I must know it sounds rubbish, so maybe I do avoid it subconsciously.
So I've seen you using it a bit.
Yeah.
Nearly all the time you've used it in a good place. There was
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 occasions where I thought, oh, hang on, that wasn't the right one. But it's the kind of thing where if you're not aware of it and no one's shown it to you and you don't understand why it doesn't work, then you're unlikely to do it.
That definitely touches on a subject that I think everybody needs to focus on when they're playing, and that's forget technically the scale that you're playing and just listen to what you're playing, because I just think that's where the best notes come out, is when you forget about going, okay, that's the shape or the scale or whatever like that, and you just go, that sounds good, therefore that must be good.
Okay, here's the best game for that, but you need a second person for it. It's a jamming game. This is a completely off topic, and this would probably be a great rut buster on its own, but let's do a little one of it quickly anyway. So I want you to play at least 1 bar, so changing chords. You can play any chords you like, but just major and minor chords. And this is because it's harder, not because it's easier. If you start playing all fancy jazzy chords, the game gets easier. But major and minor chords, at least 1 bar on each one. Okay?
Yeah.
Tell me what the first one is. There we go. Okay, so pick a chord. Pick 1 chord.
E minor.
E minor. Okay, so you're going to start on E minor. Now I got no idea what it is that you're going to play.
Okay.
I just want a rhythm, and I want you to change chords every couple of bars. So what this is forcing me to do is to listen to what you're playing rather than thinking, because I don't know where it is you're going to go, and I'm going to have to use my ears to find it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah?
Do it then.
So let's go. Bit of rhythm, so I know. So I had absolutely no idea. I wasn't playing a scale. I have no idea what key we're in. Or it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm just using my ears, and it's a really fantastic game. The trick for it is just, again, starting with just major and minor, because if you start going like into a funny altered chord, actually almost all of the notes work with it, because the point of that chord is to create loads of dissonance. It's about it being clashy. So I could then, as soon as you play a really weird chord, I could just play any random stuff and it would kind of
and we call it jazz.
Yeah, we call it jazz.
Everything's acceptable.
But in this kind of a game, it just really forces you to listen to what you're doing, and it removes all of that idea of a particular scale or a particular note or an arpeggio or anything.
You've got to be pretty confident, though, there that you're...
Well, we're about to find out.
Oh, no.
So, we're going to start on A minor.
Okay.
But what I don't want you to do is don't play licks. Okay, just think about the notes and just make small steps in the notes. If you hit a note that's a really duffer note, just move 1 step up or 1 step down and see if that one works.
See where we go.
Exactly. But just try and use your ear to find your way.
Can I apologise in advance for this, everybody?
Here we go. So the first one's A minor. 3, 4. That's it? Good.
He's gone from minor to major.
Exactly, I did. I went exactly from minor to major. And I chucked in a couple of ugly chords just to see how you deal with it.
See where we go.
But you didn't struggle with that. It sounded fluent. What it teaches you is to listen, to start getting confident in listening.
It definitely... I know what sounds right and what sounds wrong.
Exactly.
And I guess that's, if you can't tell right from wrong, then I guess you're never going to, there's no
that would be a
hope.
problem, yeah.
But if, as soon as you can kind of tell right from wrong, and I guess even there is no right and wrong, there's only context, isn't there? So it's right within the context. But I definitely, as soon as I mean, the first 4 or 5 chords in there, everything was in an A blues kind of scale, and it was fine. And then you changed, and it took me like, I need to find another position that kind of works in here, and there was like 3 or 4 just like,
yeah, okay.
Oh, there it is, and then I'm.
So what happens is, after you've done this kind of game a little bit, and it's another one of those ones that you're not going to do straight away, it takes a bit of practice, but once you've got used to it, you start to learn whether you need to step up a semitone or a tone to get to a good note. Because one of them, if you're on a note that sucks, either a semitone or a tone step up is going to work. Right. So what you find is that your ear starts to develop a sort of a sixth sense.
Is that another
just going
Jedi like Yoda moment when you just go, you're only ever a semitone or a tone away from the right note?
You are only ever a semitone away from a right note.
So you're only ever a semitone. So when you play a note that sucks, you just either got to go 1 up or 1 down, and you're okay.
Yeah. I tend to think of it as either a semitone up or a tone up, because there are a couple of instances where that doesn't work before some finicky person out there writes in and says there are occasions where that doesn't work, but nearly all the time it works. And we've talked about it a few times anyway, context is king. And actually, one of the lessons that I do, actually I haven't put it on the internet yet, but I used to do it in workshops and stuff a lot, is I can play every single note over a 12-bar blues. So there's even the note that would be, just give me a shuffle in A again, just or whatever, 12-bar. Okay, so this note. Okay, that's a clanger, right?
Yeah.
You should never hit the note A sharp over an A blues. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
But, It's a
so
bit,
you play it with enough confidence and get away from it fast enough. No one will notice.
Yeah, or pass through it.
I think a lot of those chromatic runs you can get away with, can't you? Where
exactly. It's context. Yeah. But as well, you could give it to you one more time, and I'll try and really target it this time. Okay.
I'm not so sure B.B. King would have sold many records.
I don't think B.B. King would. No, but it works in like a context of. I think it's partly the putting a blues shuffle on it that makes it, because it's so foreign to the blues language. Yeah. But you can get away with that stuff, particularly things like. I know it's getting very out there, but Mahu Vishnu Orchestra and stuff, where it was kind of jazz fusiony stuff. That tension that those things bring can be a really useful tool.
I think that was did one of these like Captain Meets interviews with Guthrie Govan, and he's just like, there is no wrong note. If you play anything with enough conviction and it's on the way to the right note, then any note is. But that's what I was saying. You were saying about chromaticism. You know, you can get away with that stuff.
Okay,
so
look,
back
we've
to
diverted
playing notes over chords.
Chord-specific licks. So. Chord-specific licks work over an individual chord, and they usually contain one note that clashes with some other chords that you're likely to hit, particularly in a blues. Now, I've headed you off at the pass and said, look, don't play that lick over the C, because it's going to suck. It's not the right one. And that goes as well for, which I've seen you using as well from pattern 3. So, but what it also does is open a lot of doors with how you can use those licks. Because this lick works great over the G because we're hitting a lot of chord tones. Well, that actually, because it's chord specific, we could move it all up to C and use that same within the C.
Which I do, albeit subconsciously. Or not but I don't really know what the theory is.
Okay, but now, now you do. I have seen you move them around. But it's important to realise that whenever you've got a chord-specific lick, you can move it around with the shapes, and therefore, instead of it being just like a limiter, like, oh, I can only use that chord over the G, if you were going, and you're like, I want to keep doing this, and it's changing to the C chord, back to G. You know, whatever, you can take any one of those licks that are chord specific and move them around. And it's not something that always works with pentatonic licks, for example. So if you're going, That kind of lick.
You can't just move that up to the.
Sometimes you can, but
let's try it.
But very often it doesn't. Well, that one, it doesn't sound great. But anyway. But this note doesn't.
I see that.
Yeah, if I'm playing that note, which is the C minor,
right.
it just sounds sour.
But the first
three
notes
few, because it's just 2 notes of the chord. That one's chord specific.
Right.
That one isn't. That's minor
it's
pentatonic.
not in the chords.
Exactly, because it's not in the G chord.
Did you guys see that? I hope you saw that. I mean, so that sort of that's not in the chords.
It's not in the chord of G, so it doesn't.
So
work
wherever
over
you
the
play
C.
it, it's not going to
exactly
fit right, but it fits within the
minor pentatonic scale. So the minor pentatonic works as something that you can use in the whole key. It's not chord specific though, and that's the point. So you can't just go ripping all your minor pentatonic licks around wherever you like. They need to be chord specific licks.
So weird. My brain now hurts because what we're basically saying is that I can play a 12-bar G and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I can't.
But over the C it doesn't work.
Over the C it doesn't work. So as long as I stay within the G, that's okay.
Exactly,
but if I go to the C, it doesn't
exactly.
work, or the D, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I see.
You got it? And the reason it's kind of on the C, if that particular note, for example, on the C, is this note, which is the note E flat, or C minor, but that becomes that note in a blues, which is one of those ones that, to my ear, it just sounds sour. I've never found, that's the one note in a blues where I would, when I was, mouthing off before, like, oh, you can play any note. But that one particularly is just like, it sounds wrong all the time. I can never get to grip my head around how to make it sound sweet. So I think the important thing is to make the distinction between when you're playing licks and when you're learning, particularly when you're learning a new lick, is it chord specific or is it not? Because if it is a chord specific one, you've got the freedom to move it around to the different chords within your 12-bar blues. And if it's not, you need to learn where it fits and then use it over that particular chord.
Got it. Yep. Yeah. So it gives me two tools in my ammunition of sort of going, I can stay within the G pentatonic scale if I want to, in whatever position I want to do, or I can take the sort of the arpeggio approach, and when the chords goes to here.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. Perfect.
But then it doesn't. Yeah, I've got to be careful.
Exactly.
Really careful to not to just go into some sort of pentatonic vibe on the wrong
That's
root
the
note.
danger. Okay, so we're getting into stuff that's kind of beyond the basic blues thing. So the way I teach blues is I have 4 levels of it. Where the first one is where you just learn to play a bunch of licks in pattern 1, a little bit pattern 2. And I think that everyone should get confident with the idea of some licks, how to develop the licks, how to use them, string bending, vibrato, the basic skills that you need.
Yeah.
The second stage of it for me is when you look at playing all over the neck. So you learn the other 3 patterns of the minor pentatonic. You learn where the blue note is, so you can incorporate those things. And I think before you start adventuring anywhere else, you want to be confident with that. You want to know, for you, I'd say we should definitely learn some licks in pattern 3 and probably some licks in pattern 5 as well, which I've never seen you play in pattern 5 yet. It's this one back here.
I don't like any of them where there's that 4 note or whatever,
I know.
It's just, I like them when there's just like weird. Not even 4, like a 3.
I know what you mean.
3-note stretch, or the 4-note stretch, because it just immediately it means my little finger might have to come into play. I don't know.
No, exactly. It's not.
So I'm a sort of avoid them, but I shouldn't.
At some point, I'm going to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Get you into some more licks. So that would be for me like the second stage. The third stage is stuff that we've touched on, like using the 6th and the 9th and the major pentatonic. And then after that is where we start making changes, right? Which is this idea of having much more chord-specific stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we just did a kind of a basic example where we took the one lick and moved it up and down the fingerboard.
Yeah.
But you don't always have, and this is where it gets interesting, is you don't have to move the licks up and down the fingerboard. In fact, you don't even have to play the same lick. So I might go on the G chord, and then when it goes to the C chord, I don't have to go... Why do I have to move position? Why do I have to even play the same lick? I might go, which is a chord-specific lick for C, right? And then I'll go back to a G, a different one. So the first step is realizing, oh, I've got a chord specific lick. I can move it up and down the fingerboard to follow my chord shapes because it's nice and easy. It's relatively straightforward to do. There's nothing that's going to trip you up. But then eventually you want to start thinking of not necessarily having to use the same lick all the time and maybe playing within the pentatonic and then into a bit of chord specificness, if there's such a word as that, and then back to the minor pentatonic. You might be playing, since we're in G today, pentatonic, C, and then back to pentatonic. Now straight away, one of the things I was doing there was targeting those two different notes. This chord specific note, I can target on the G, and then the normal minor pentatonic when it moves to the C chord. And you can kind of hear, it sometimes goes wrong, but I'll try and play a 12-bar blues where I really obviously outline the changes just by using those two notes. So here's the G, so 3, 4. So could you hear kind of the 12-bar blues changes, even though I was only playing, for the most part, single notes? So you can do that by targeting the chord specificness of the one chord. And I'm not that I've ever done this, but I can kind of see why spending a little bit of time doing some transcribing would help, because again, I think if you can visualize what that chord, what the different chords look like on like a chord chart, it begins to pick out, because I heard you doing that over the C. Yeah, it's a great which totally makes sense given that's how you play a C7. Absolutely. And to be honest, where I started out with learning this stuff was I was transcribing a lot of Chuck Berry and that kind of Rolling Stones and those sort of bands. And I'm fairly sure they weren't that hip on the theory, but they could obviously see a chord shape. And you get quite there's a few blues examples, straight 12-bar bluesers, that have a different chord change. So they'll do like, I'll move back to the key of A. It might go A to D, A. But then it might, usually it'll be D for a bit, then back to A. And then it might go to B, to E. Now on that B chord, if you stick with playing your A minor pentatonic stuff, it's really rank. It's just not a happening sound. Now, when you hear that in a lot of the older kind of blues artists, when that chord comes along, they don't play any sort of fancy arpeggio stuff. They're playing the chord tones because you can see, oh, there's a B, so I can go. Oh, and then we're back to the E, which is on my regular blues thing. So just on that one chord, the foreign chord, you just visually look at the chord and go, okay, I'm going to hit some of those notes in the chord. And it works every time because those chord tones are guaranteed to work over that chord. I've got an old, he was like my father-in-law, was one of his best friends, a guy called Johnny Kelly that played guitar in loads of really cool bands in the 50s, did all the military bases in Germany on the same bill as Jimi Hendrix and all this kind of, got some great, anyway, he is like an uber cool rock and roll guitar player. And I've literally got, tell me what you're doing, Johnny, like that. And he's like, I don't know. It's just like, and it's like, and any of those slightly alien chord changes, in other words, the stuff that isn't just your standard, whether, as you say, where it maybe does go to a B or something like that. I never even really thought, I guess that is what he's doing. He's just literally playing the notes out of the B chord in a rock and roll way. Over a few, if you were doing, let's say you had a song that had that B chord in it and you were gigging it 3 or 4 times a week. The first few times you do the solo, you're probably just going to hit the chord tones, but you're going to get bored of that fairly quickly. So you might start going, well, can I go? And then if it works, you go, oh, I've got another lick. And then you could eventually start building up more and more licks out of it.
I think also as well, when you go back to some of that old rock and roll stuff, is why so many of the licks are multi-string. Because it makes sense. They're just literally sort of hitting 3 notes out of the chord shape or something like that.
And it totally works. So just be aware. So my advice for you guys out there, if you're looking, again, we're calling this series Rut Busters, go through your repertoire of licks, try and dig down. This is another lesson could be, but writing down all of your pet licks is a really, really great idea. Just get a piece of manuscript paper or tab or whatever, and just writing down in tab all of your pet licks, because it exposes how many you've got, because for a lot of people it's a lot less than they think it would be. They'll be like, must have 100 licks, but it ends up being like 5 or whatever. So that's really good. But also for this kind of exercise, it gives you a chance to look at it and go, oh yeah, no, I was doing this lick and that's a chord specific one, so I could use it this way. And I think it's a really good idea. I'm not saying you have to like number them and stuff. That would be a bit over the top, but at least having as an exercise, writing down your licks, I think is a good thing.
Well, always a pleasure,
mate.
And please, guys, comment in the comment section below about the direction you'd like this journey to go, if anywhere.
It's kind of fun. Yeah, exactly. If you really hate this, just let us know.
Just let us know, and then we'll find something different to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, no, thank you again to Justin from JustinGuitar.com for coming over, and I look forward to being on your channel soon.
Yes,
I may have already been, depending on
depending on when you watch this.
But yes, thank you very much for coming in, and
you're welcome.
Thank you guys for watching, and we shall see you next time.
See ya.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the Andertons Guitar YouTube channel. If you're a drummer or a keyboard player or interested in music technology, you might find one of our other channels interesting, and I'll put details of those in the description below. If you want to find out more about the products we've just featured, please click here. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt like this, please click here. If you want to watch another video on our guitar channel, click down here. And to subscribe to our guitar channel, click here. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.